Hello everybody. As usual, I'm doing my recordings pretty much on Saturday mornings now, or Saturday as I get some tasks done. I may float into the afternoon, but yeah, I'm gonna try to be consistent in getting out some stuff. So primarily now, as you know, like I'm wanting to focus on full albums, at least once a month, and then I go and do a lot of research into those albums, and then I'm going to be doing basically your requests throughout the weeks, and just so compile those into a nice long video that I'm going to do today. So I'm going to just show my gratitude with your requests, and I kind of dig in. I'm going to dig into those requests and take a quick listen. They're mostly pretty much brand new listens, fresh listens. I maybe go through the album and just sort of needle drop on a few songs to find the selection to do, or the couple selections. I have been doing one, but I might just do a couple, if it feels right to do. So we're gonna move on to the next one. As I said, just did some Chris McGregor, Brotherhood of Breath, 1971. It's fantastic, great recommendation. So excited, all these recommendations, they start piling up, and when I get through them, it's just amazing what I'm left with, that I would keep on. I'm just amazing tunes, and it's always fun. I always enjoy building and hearing new music that I can, be inspired by, and appreciate the creativity, especially when I go in and I look a little bit deeper into the musicians and sort of where they were at the time, and the other people that were sort of, what builds up this creativity. It doesn't just happen out of nothing. What's the inspiration behind them, that we could also get inspired by. We're going to do this. This was recommended by an early guy that had some great things to say in the comments. He has some great recommendations. So, and I believe he said something like, if you like this group, whether it was, I'm not sure if it was progressive rock, Gentle Giant, might have been P-Funk, could have been a bunch of different stuff, but he said, if you like this, then you should check out these guys. So Wendell Wiggins, 3776. I appreciate it very much. Yeah, you told me to go listen to Happy the Man, self-titled album. If you send me something and I'm playing it now, it means that it really hit me over the head, in a certain way, in one way or in all ways. Sometimes it's just one thing, could be just the great singer. I just love the way the guitar happens, or it could be the whole band is just blowing me out of the water. I've never heard anything like it. So, and this definitely fell into that category as something where I was not expecting. I didn't know about these guys, and I was not expecting to hear what I heard, even a little bit of that I heard. So anyway, without further ado, let's jump into this. I appreciate the recommendation by Wendell Wiggins, Happy the Man. So I listened to their self-titled, I listened to little bits of their self-titled album, 1977. And just to give you the musicians, Stanley Whitaker on electric guitar, acoustic guitar, and it's kind of mixed on the tracks. But let's see, it's going to be Stanley Whitaker in lead vocals, and Frank Wyatt is going to cover sort of more like the woodwind and flute sax. Kit Watkins on all the synth stuff, Rick Kennel on electric bass, and Mike Beck on drums. So, without further ado, this is Happy the Man, 1977, and we're going to do the first track called Starborne. Here we go. Okay. Obviously, yeah, that's a very, introductory style choice there. Similar to like, whatever, like Jimi Hendrix doing, And the Gods Made Love, for his first, sort of just sets the mood for, maybe it's like a palate cleanser. It's like whatever you've been listening to before that, I'm going to wipe that all away, completely erase it, so that I can start fresh and bring you into, make you hear this on our own terms. But yeah, I love the, this is, I'm definitely getting, in the past few years, I definitely opened myself up much more to, the idea of, all the genres around the, buildup of electronic music and synths, mini moogs, ARPs, all that stuff, whether it was into like experimental electronic music, whether it was, went into like funk music, jazz fusion, what have you. So yeah, as far as just the sounds themselves, into the styles of music that we're not used to hearing them, perhaps. So, but yeah, I love it. Obviously, this track sounded like it was mostly electronic. I'm not sure if that was Mini Moog or ARP. I think it was one of those two, making all those sounds. Obviously, in the background, there was a lot of layering. There could have been 4 or half a dozen different sounds, because I even heard the drums just halfway through, just barely way up in the corner, just a little snare, just sort of keeping this beat together. So yeah, that one was obviously much more a very ambient, interesting melody and sort of a motif, of sounds, of chords, progressions, stuff like that. So yeah, but definitely intriguing. Honestly, when I first heard this, I was definitely intrigued and excited to hear what was going to be coming, and especially for this period at 77. So it's kind of late for, sort of this. I don't know if it's going to be prog rock sort of, or like you said, late stage sort of electronic mixed with rock or experimental avant-garde, whatever that is. 77 is certainly, getting ready to be taken over by, a whole new, at the time there's obviously popular music and disco music and all these other styles that were, taking a big chunk out of the, what people heard and saw at the time. So, but even then the styles of changing, in the late 70s into the 80s, obviously with, new wave and all this stuff, there was a whole new avenue of where keyboards were going to be centered around. So it certainly it's certainly an interesting period to sort of hear another group come out and sort of where are they gonna take this, where are they gonna sit with this, with everything that's happened already, in music through the 70s, obviously. A lot of stuff's been done. So, but that being said, yeah, so just 4 guys. Stanley Whitaker, I don't know if I heard him on that. I don't hear any electric guitar. Frank Wyatt might have been on keyboards there in the background, sort of with that like string bed. But yeah, a lot of Kit Watkins. I assume there was some bass on there, but it was more mixed in. Anyway, briefly, we're going to go on to one more song, obviously, because this is like an introduction. We want to hear a little bit more of, the different diversity or what their whole sound is going to be. So, Happy the Man's self-titled debut album was recorded at A&M Studios towards the end of 1976 with Ken Scott, who worked with Mahavishnu Orchestra, Supertramp, and David Bowie, and which really impressed Happy the Man. So he handled production duties and was released in 1977. The album included only 2 songs with vocals, so both of which were compositions sung by Whitaker, and Rolling Stone ranked it 50th on their list of the 50 greatest prog rock albums of all time. Interesting. I don't know what year they did that, but it'd be good if it was that year that they ranked it 50th. So it might have been really fresh on their radar. So anyway, in an interview, Happy the Man's formation in 1973 coincided with a time when progressive rock was flourishing globally. What was what was it about the musical landscape of the early 70s that inspired you and Rick Kennel to create a band like Happy the Man? This is to Stanley Whitaker. Did you feel like pioneers in the U.S. scene, or given prog's heavy European roots? So Stanley Whitaker said, we did feel a bit like pioneers in the U.S. We also felt we were unique and different from most of the popular European proggers who influenced us. And then asked, obviously, who were the most influential musicians for you personally? And to Stanley Whitaker. And he said, well, basically the Beatles, Jimi Hendrix, Jeff Beck, Free, Humble Pie. But I also loved Debussy, Ravel, and Stravinsky, like all the obvious proggers, but loved Gentle Giant. All-time favorite prog group, musically and personally, huge impact and influence on me. That's very interesting, obviously. Gentle Giant, who I just pretty much got reintroduced to, through acquiring the taste, did the whole album, and I have yet to move on to the next album yet. So I am contemplating doing the next album as a first review also. But I've still been listening to Acquire the Taste, yeah, and I can see it's interesting to see this was at least Stanley Whitaker's favorite prog group. So as I've only really yet to hear their second album, I'm not sure how much of that, or which part of their sound, which part of their sound he's most influenced by, but for sure, I think we're going to hear some of their style. So, but yeah, it's interesting. 76. So obviously, we've gone through already the first a few years of. We've already gone through. By the time this group came out, 76, prog rock had already brought forth, most of its huge players, huge bands. So by this time, we're sort of might be considered, that second wave of prog rock, because it's getting ready to go through either a huge change or take a huge hit as far as the styles go, changing styles. So this could have been, what were some of the last prog rock bands being put out? This could be on the list. True prog rock before it was, sort of neutralized in a way. But yeah, obviously, let's go on to the next. Let's do one more tune off of here. This one was, again, I listened to snippets, and they definitely do some really busy music and some different, but I don't know. I'm going to go into number 8, the song Hidden Moods, for whatever reason. I don't know. I just thought it was, and number 8, this one looks like this will have Stanley Whitaker on electric guitar, acoustic guitar, also Frank Wyatt on flute, and also marimba, I believe, or flute, clavinet and flute, Kit Watkins. So there'll be some different instrumentation on this. All right, here we go. Wow, I got lost in that one. I was literally surprised that ended right there. I was thinking that was just the middle, and it was going to go on for a bit longer. I didn't know it was that short. Oh, man, that was so cool sounding. Yeah, like I said, it's just, I can see the Gentle Giant sort of inspiration, at least in one of the members. I don't know the other members, what their main influences were. But I'd really be interested in the keyboard, because he seems obviously like a major voice in this group. I mean, he's got so many different sounds that he's bringing to the group. All the different keyboard sounds. Obviously, each keyboard he can find just the right tone that he's looking for. In this one, he's kind of mirroring, playing. He's got the right and two sides, harmony parts, basically doing unison parts with like. I can't hear exactly if they're exactly the same thing, if they're playing different instruments, and he's sort of mirroring it as it goes up. But obviously he has a bunch, some different sounds. He's got the little electronic sounds coming in from, and then coming in the other side. So he's very, very busy at filling in the space and the spectrum, of what's available to him. Sort of in the left and right and depth of the sound as we hear it, in the back and the front and everything like that. But yeah, that one's so it starts off very Hidden Dreams, as they say. Starts off very kind of like the intro, it starts off a little subtle and quickly just picks it up into sort of, mid-tempo. I like the bass line, it's got this sort of, and especially where that one chord they go to where it kind of really has this Middle Eastern feel. And it's really cool because he actually changes through the chord. If he holds, usually they'd hold the chord for, 4 to 8 beats. But it seems like he doesn't break up changing chords. It's almost like he just he morphs the chord as it moves through it into this. He starts adding these notes that sort of give it this different feel. So it starts off this sort of, just feels like a normal cadence and end chord resolve, where a chord would resolve to something, and then he slowly like morphs it into this sort of different feel. And yeah, I love that because it just sort of twists you a little bit, just like kind of pushes your shoulder in a little bit and just moves you into this different feel. And then some of the lines in the second part definitely had this sort of Middle Eastern. He was playing in these sort of adding these scales that had this more Middle Eastern feel to it. But yeah, the drums and the bass, I love the bass line. It's got this, once it gets going, sort of has this has this sort of almost it's been around. A lot of people would use that, for Weather Report, a lot of the jazz groups at the time also. Maybe not as much even the prog bands, but definitely in the jazz groups, have this sort of momentous, have that sort of bass pattern, kind of keeps everything going. So yeah, bass and drums obviously kind of had just keeping it steady. The keyboard was really just, like I said, the pauses, the space he would add sometimes was the most jarring part of it. Sometimes where he wouldn't play, he would just stop, and it kind of almost like you're like going from 60 miles an hour and then just slam on the brakes, and he just pauses and then he just starts going again. Yeah, I feel like I got to listen to it so much more. I want to listen to it again, but I love the sound. I love the sound of his keyboard, the different sounds that he incorporates into it. Because like I said, I don't hear it that much. I haven't heard it that much in the way that he's doing it. And the different sounds, how he's incorporating it is sort of arranging these sort of orchestra, of synth sounds and different keyboard sounds, into the mix. I don't know. I'm trying to think who focuses on that as much. I think probably Gentle Giant. Like I said, I haven't heard all of their discography, so I still have more listening to do with them. But I certainly like what he's doing. I like those sounds, that they're bringing to the table. Yeah, it almost kind of reminded me, almost like, I was trying to think, because it does have a feel like it's really kind of almost soft jazz, soft prog so far. It's not, I think it's the lack of guitars, obviously, or the guitars they're using are more, more kind of jazzy, guitar perhaps, or acoustic guitar in this, so almost like Jean-Luc Ponty or something like that, so it's sort of in this different field now. I think maybe that's where this late 70s into the late 70s more prog is sort of almost mixing now with what we think of as like even like yacht rock, or even into like the ambient field, ambient electronic, ambient sounds. Nowadays it's hard because there's so much, it's just so, all the genres kind of just mesh together. It's hard to say what's what. But certainly, yeah, into the electronica genre, from the late 60s and through the late 70s, certainly started to develop some of these sort of same feels with different players. So it kind of almost, when I'm listening to it, yeah, it kind of like is falling into all these different spaces, or I'm trying to hear, not comparisons, but just different influences and different things where they would have been sitting at the time. If I was hearing them at the time, what are the other voices, the other sounds that I would say, to compare them to or to sound like. But yeah, ultimately, I'd like to listen to them just on their own, whether it was they came out in the 60s or they came out in the 80s. I'm taking it in just as it is. So yeah, I really like it. It's really tasteful. At the end of the day, like, it's super tasteful. The production is great. It sounds like they really have an idea of what they want to do. And just to go into a quick last bit of stuff, I didn't find too much about them. I looked up some different their CDs and liner notes and history and stuff like that. And there's not a ton out there. I'd love to hear some more if you have any information on that. If there's any good sites to get their more background of their history. But one of the questions asked Stanley Whitaker was, Happy the Man's music is often described as intensely intricate yet emotionally resonant. How do you balance technical complexity with accessibility? He said basically, we rehearse 6 to 8 hours every day, sometimes more. We obsessed over perfection, but we always tried to be melodic. We approached arrangements more like an orchestra. There wasn't much improv in Happy the Man. We were blessed to have 3 very different writers, but we managed to keep it cohesive, and we seem to have a way of making odd timeless signatures feel like 4/4. Yeah, I love reading stuff like that, honestly, because it just gives me this insight into what already feels known, but it's nice to hear the that sort of backed up in the originators and the creators, So yeah, practice, melodic, a mixture of emotional, resonant, but also melodic and technically not showing off, but technically astute and technical ability into play what they wanted to play, not just for the sake of technical ability. And yeah, that's how it comes off to me. It sounds like it's, perfection into what their intent was. They definitely arrived what they were looking to get out of it. So that's good in that sense, that that's what they were looking to get out, and that's what we can hear. Not the effect of recording studios and producers and arrangers and things like that. So yeah, it sounds like a sort of electronic orchestra, just practiced in the melodicism and technical ability just to intermingle to what they wanted to get. But yeah, I'd really love to listen to more of their stuff right now. Now that I've listened to these 2, I am gonna listen to some more of their stuff. Maybe this might be a great album of theirs. So yeah, I'm always looking for the next full album. So if you have any more ideas about the next full album, whether it's the next Gentle Giant after Acquiring the Taste, or Happy the Man, any other prog rock, anything in the sort of a little bit more adventurous, experimental side, I would love to be have it be known, if you guys want to recommend a full album. Because yeah, I'm definitely looking for future full albums to listen to as a whole. Because I really like listening to a whole. I'd love to listen to this album as a whole, potentially. Just to get a more concrete vision of what they were doing. So, that said, I appreciate it. Yeah, we're gonna go into the next recommendation, And I really appreciate you guys. Wendell, thank you for this. Feel free to reach out more recommendations. And like I said, I'll put this out next month, a few more weeks or so. I'll have the next set of recommendations out there for everybody. And again, this is great. This is why I do it. This is the selfish part where I get to find new music from you guys, and hopefully I can give back and put out some new music for you guys to sort of get interested in and inspired by in some way. And hopefully, it triggers you to find some other stuff. So again, you guys have a great day, and I'll see you on the next one. Okay, bye-bye.